My name is Arthur. I'm 45, and for most of my life, I believed I understood the true meaning of permanence. I restore antiques here in Savannah, you see, in a beautiful sprawling old house that's been in my family for generations. This house isn't just a building. It's a living archive, each creaking floorboard and peeling layer of paint a testament to stories endured, lives lived, and beauty salvaged through time. My profession isn't just a job, it's a philosophy. I find the broken, the discarded, the forgotten, and with patience and respect I bring them back to life. I believed my own life, my marriage to Evelyn, was much the same, a perfectly crafted heirloom, solid, enduring, destined to grow only richer with age. Evelyn, she was like a vibrant splash of color in a world I sometimes feared was growing too muted, too sepia-toned. I met her at an art fair, a local potter with hands perpetually stained with clay, but a mind that sparkled with ideas. She had a laugh that could unravel me, a way of looking at the world that felt utterly fresh, a stark contrast to my own methodical historical gaze. I remember thinking then that she was the missing piece, the kinetic energy my quiet life needed. We fell in love quickly, passionately, swept up in the romance of Savannah itself. Moonlight strolls under Spanish moss, whispered promises on wrought iron balconies. She didn't share my quiet obsession with history and decay, but she appreciated the beauty of my work, the dedication it required. Or so I thought. Looking back, there were whispers, faint echoes that I dismissed as the natural creaks and groans of any old structure settling into itself. She was ambitious, more so than I found it admirable, a sign of her spirit. She'd occasionally make decisions without much consultation, framing them as simply being efficient, saving me the trouble. My quiet nature meant I often deferred, and she'd fill the space. A new painting bought for the living room that I wasn't fond of, but she insisted it modernized the space. A surprise trip booked without checking my schedule. But Arthur, you always work too much. This will be good for you, little things. I saw them as signs of her vibrant autonomy, never as a diminishing of my own. My best friend Mark often joked about it, saying Evelyn wore the pants, but I always just smiled, content in the quiet dignity I felt I held. Mark, too, was a part of my life's carefully constructed narrative. We'd been friends since childhood, shared a love for classic cars and bad jokes, a constant reliable presence. He was the brother I never had. The first real tremor, the first shift in the foundations of my perfectly crafted world, began with the attic renovation. Our attic was a dusty, forgotten realm, a repository of family memories and forgotten junk. Evelyn, with her boundless energy, declared it needed to be transformed. A creative space, she called it, a sanctuary for her pottery perhaps, or a bright new guest suite. I was initially excited, even offered to help, but somehow I was always busy, always had a crucial restoration piece demanding my attention downstairs. And Evelyn, well, she had Mark. Mark was always handy, a natural with tools and a willing helper. At first it made sense. He was between jobs and a project would keep him busy. They started spending hours up there, day after day. I'd hear the muffled thud of hammers, the whine of power saws, the low murmur of their voices filtering down through the old floorboards. I'd come home from a long day in the workshop, tired but looking forward to Evelyn's easy conversation, only to find her and Mark emerging from the attic, dusty, laughing. A shared camaraderie I wasn't privy to. "Just making progress, honey," she'd say, wiping a smudge from her cheek. "Mark's been a godsend." Mark would nod, a friendly, familiar grin on his face. "Anything for an old friend, Arthur." A strange, unfamiliar loneliness began to settle over me. It wasn't just the physical distance, it was an emotional one. I'd try to join them sometimes, climb the steep attic stairs, ready to offer a hand, but the atmosphere felt different. Evelyn would wave me off, saying, "Oh, it's just a mess right now, darling. You wouldn't want to get dust on your work clothes." Or, "Mark and I are just figuring out the wiring. It's too complicated for you to jump in right now." Mark would chime in, "Yeah, Arthur, go on, enjoy your evening. We've got this." I'd retreat, feeling superfluous, dismissed. It began to feel less like a shared home and more like a stage where I was increasingly a background extra, observing a play unfold without me. The attic project became a constant hum in the background of my life, a low-frequency vibration that frayed my nerves. I started to notice other things. Evelyn's phone was always with her, face down. Hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. Mark's car, which used to be parked only occasionally, was now a fixture in our driveway, sometimes even overnight, with Evelyn explaining he was helping late and decided to crash in the guest room. Each instance on its own was explainable, innocuous. Together they formed a pattern, a distorted reflection in the polished surface of my carefully maintained life. I felt a growing knot in my stomach, a persistent unease that I tried to rationalize away. Stress, I told myself. My own anxieties about an upcoming exhibition. Evelyn was just being Evelyn, efficient and strong. Mark was just being Mark, a good friend. My mind, trained to see the beauty in broken things, struggled to accept the possibility of something truly ugly. Then came the gaslighting, the subtle twists of my reality. I remember one evening I found them in the kitchen, leaning close over a laptop, their heads almost touching. Evelyn's hand was briefly, intimately on Mark's arm. My heart gave a sickening lurch. When I cleared my throat, they sprang apart. Evelyn's smile was too bright. Mark's eyes darted away. "What are you two up to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, but the tremor was undeniable. Evelyn laughed, a tinkling sound that felt like shards of glass. "Oh, Arthur, you're so melodramatic. Mark was just showing me some new design ideas for the attic." "We were trying to surprise you," Mark nodded vigorously. "Yeah, just brainstorming. I wanted to believe them. I needed to believe them." I felt foolish, jealous. I apologized, mumbled something about being tired. But the image of her hand on his arm, the way they had jumped apart, it stayed with me, a persistent thorn. Later that week I hesitantly brought it up again. "Evelyn," I said, my voice softer, "I sometimes feel like I'm not part of the attic project or even what's going on in your life lately." She turned from the sink, her expression cool, almost annoyed. "Arthur, what on earth are you talking about? We tell you everything. You just don't always listen. You're always so wrapped up in your dusty old furniture. And honestly, it's not always exciting, all the logistical stuff. You worry too much. You're stressed." She approached me then, placing a hand on my cheek, a gesture that used to comfort but now felt like a performance. "You need to relax, darling. Mark is just a friend, a very helpful friend. You know how much he means to me, to us." The way she said "to us" felt like a gentle knife twist, implying my distrust was an insult to our shared history, our friendship with Mark. I retreated, feeling confused, shamed. Was I imagining things? Was I becoming paranoid? My meticulous mind, used to order and truth, struggled to reconcile my observations with her explanations. The world felt wobbly, the ground beneath me shifting. I started questioning my own sanity, my own perceptions. The echo I felt in the house wasn't just a physical absence, but a psychological one. An echo of myself fading, distorted, silenced. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday, a day like any other. I was working on a delicate Georgian writing desk, the kind that held secrets in its hidden compartments. My hands, usually steady, felt clumsy. My mind kept drifting to the attic, to Evelyn and Mark, to the knot of dread that had become a permanent resident in my gut. I couldn't focus. Impulsively, I decided I would go up there, demand to be shown around, force my way back into that space. I climbed the attic stairs, each step heavy. The door, usually ajar, was closed. I pushed it open. Sunlight streamed through a newly installed skylight, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The space was transformed, sleek, modern, with minimalist furniture I'd never seen before, a stark contrast to the historical character of our home. It wasn't a pottery studio. It was a living space, a modern apartment complete with a small kitchenette. My gaze drifted to a stack of architectural drawings on a new drafting table. Below them, tucked almost carelessly, was a leather-bound ledger. It wasn't the kind of ledger I used for my business with its neat, ordered columns for income and expenses. This one was different. It felt personal. I hesitated, my heart thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. But the compulsion was too strong. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first page was dated 6 months ago. The handwriting was Evelyn's, precise and elegant. Attic renovation budget. Below it, entries I skimmed. New skylight, custom cabinetry, appliance deposits. Then, further down, the words that punched the air from my lungs. New home down payment. Shared. Mortgage pre-approval application, submitted E&M. My eyes raced, blurring over lines, then snapping back into focus. Furniture selection. Agreed. Closing date target 3 months. Divorce lawyer consultation. Complete Evelyn. It wasn't just an attic renovation. It was a blueprint. A meticulous, detailed blueprint for a future that erased me. My name was nowhere. Mark's name, however, was peppered throughout. Evelyn and Mark, E&M. The life constructed without my knowledge, without my consent, under my own roof. I sank onto a stack of plasterboard. The ledger clutched in my hand, its weight suddenly unbearable. The sunbeam felt cold. The air, thick with the smell of fresh paint and sawdust, now reeked of betrayal. My perfectly crafted heirloom life wasn't just chipped. It had been painstakingly dismantled piece by piece, by the very hands I trusted most. The blood drained from my face. My chest tightened, a crushing pressure. It was like I had fallen from a great height, hitting the ground with a silent, devastating impact. Everything I thought I knew, every memory, every shared laugh, every quiet moment of contentment, twisted into something grotesque, a stage-managed illusion. The echoes weren't just in the house anymore. They were in my head. The hollow sound of my shattered reality reverberating through my skull. I don't remember how long I sat there, the ledger in my lap, its pages a testament to my profound foolishness. The silence of the attic, once a source of unease, was now deafening, amplifying the scream in my head. When I finally descended the stairs, my legs felt like lead, my movements robotic. I hid the ledger in my workshop, beneath a pile of antique textiles, too raw to confront them, too broken to speak. I needed time to breathe, to process this magnitude of deceit. That evening the world felt surreal. Evelyn was humming in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Mark arrived shortly after, whistling a tune. They were oblivious, utterly unaware of the seismic shift that had occurred in my world. They laughed, chatted about the day's progress in the attic, their voices a casual, sickening counterpoint to the raging storm inside me. "So Mark, did you get those samples for the kitchen island sorted?" Evelyn asked, setting a plate of salmon in front of me. Her smile was innocent, a mask I now saw through with terrifying clarity. "I really think the quartz will tie in perfectly with the new appliances." Mark nodded, taking a sip of wine. "Yeah, I dropped by the showroom. They should be delivered to the new place by next week." He glanced at Evelyn, a conspiratorial flicker in his eyes. "We still need to decide on paint colors for the master bedroom, though." "Oh, I'm leaning towards that muted blue," Evelyn replied, picking at her salad. "It'll make the space feel so much more serene." "What do you think, Arthur?" The question hung in the air, a final, casual stab. Muted blue for their master bedroom. The words were a physical blow. I felt a cold rage begin to simmer beneath the numb despair. They were talking about their future, their new home in front of me, in my home, as if I were a deaf, blind, utterly irrelevant fixture. My hands, which had been resting on my lap, clenched into fists. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to steady the tremor in my voice. "The new place," I began, my voice a ragged whisper that sounded alien even to my own ears. They both looked up, a hint of confusion in their expressions. "The muted blue for the master bedroom." I pushed my plate away, the food suddenly sickening. My gaze locked onto Evelyn, then Mark, then back to Evelyn. The masks were still on, but they were cracking. "Arthur, what are you talking about?" Evelyn asked, her brow furrowed, a practiced air of bewilderment. My vision blurred. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a scrape that echoed loudly in the sudden silence. I walked deliberately to the workshop, my legs surprisingly steady despite the earthquake in my soul. I returned. The worn leather ledger held aloft a silent, damning testament. I placed it on the dinner table, pushing it towards Evelyn, then Mark. My finger trembled as I pointed to the entry about the down payment, then the divorce lawyer. "This," I said, my voice rising, raw and unsteady, "this is what I'm talking about. Your new place, your muted blue master bedroom, your shared future expenses." Each word felt like a shard of ice tearing through my throat. Evelyn's face, usually so composed, crumpled for a split second, a flicker of panic. Mark's jaw tightened. They stared at the ledger, then at me, their faces stripped bare. "Arthur, I don't know what this is," Evelyn stammered, a desperate, pathetic attempt at feigned ignorance. But it was too late. The dam had broken. "Don't lie to me, Evelyn," I choked out, the pain of physical ache. "Don't you dare, it's your handwriting, it's all here, every detail of the life you've been building behind my back. A life that doesn't include me." My voice cracked on the last words, a sob catching in my throat. She looked at me then, her blue eyes, once so full of warmth, now cold and distant, devoid of pity. The mask of innocence vanished, replaced by a chillingly calm resolve. "All right, Arthur, fine, you want the truth. The truth is I haven't been happy for a long time. This life, it's too small for me, too quiet, too dusty." She gestured vaguely around our living room. "At the very history I cherished, the very essence of my being, I need more. Mark gives me more." Mark finally spoke, his voice thin, almost inaudible. "Arthur, I'm so sorry. It just happened." His eyes were fixed on the table, unable to meet mine. "We didn't mean for it to hurt you." Hurt me. The understatement was so profound it was almost comical. My entire world had just been obliterated, and they spoke of hurt. The sheer audacity, the coldness of her admission, the hollow insincerity of his apology. It shattered whatever remained of my composure. My hands began to shake violently. The beautiful, solid heirloom of my life, my marriage, my friendship, had not just fallen apart. It had been deliberately, maliciously dismantled, then reassembled into a new grotesque form that had no space for me. The next few days blurred into a haze of shock and profound grief. I felt like a ghost haunting my own home. My body moved, but my mind was stuck in a loop, replaying Evelyn's cold words, Mark's pathetic apology, the brutal honesty of the ledger. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The familiar sense of my home, the comforting textures of my workshop all felt alien, tainted. Every corner held a memory, now twisted into a painful mockery. I saw Evelyn's face in the patterns of sunlight on the floorboards, heard her laugh in the rustle of leaves outside, The man I was, Arthur, the steady, grounded restorer of old things, had vanished, leaving behind a hollowed-out shell. The emotional collapse was absolute. I spent hours staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, the ceiling of the room Evelyn and I had shared, the room where we had made countless promises. Now all I could see were the blueprints for their new life, for their new bedroom, with its muted blue walls. I felt a visceral nausea, a disgust not just with them, but with myself for being so blind, so trusting. The idea that this had been planned for months, that I had been living a lie, breathing it in every day, every moment. It was suffocating. One morning, after what felt like an eternity of darkness, something shifted. I was in my workshop, aimlessly running my fingers over the rough grain of an unfinished piece of mahogany. A small, forgotten memory surfaced. A tiny antique music box given to me by my grandmother, that had been shattered in a childhood accident. I had cried for days. My grandfather, a carpenter, had meticulously pieced it back together, making it whole again. It had never been perfect, the cracks visible under close inspection, but it held its music, its story. He had taught me then that some things, even when broken, can still sing. A flicker of anger, cold and sharp, cut through the fog of my despair. Not just sorrow, but a righteous fury. This wasn't just sadness, this was a violation. They hadn't just broken me, they had tried to erase me, and in that moment, running my hands over the wood, a primal instinct for self-preservation kicked in. I wouldn't be erased. I wouldn't simply crumble into dust. My awakening was slow, painful, but resolute. I couldn't fix them. I couldn't fix what they had done, but I could fix myself. The first step was the hardest. Evelyn was still living in the house, a chillingly calm presence, offering to talk things through. Her voice devoid of genuine remorse, more like a legal maneuver than an emotional plea. I refused. I couldn't bear to hear another lie, another manipulative half-truth. Instead, I began to strip the house, not of its essence but of hers. Every item that Evelyn had brought into our shared life, every piece of pottery, every modern painting she insisted on, every piece of furniture she had chosen without my input, I meticulously gathered them. I rented a storage unit, labeling boxes with a grim efficiency, her clothes, her books, her eclectic collection of scented candles. I cleared out her side of the closet, the bathroom cabinet, the shelves in the living room. It was a physical act of severing, a silent, methodical reclamation of my space, my home from her parasitic influence. She watched me, sometimes with a flicker of indignation, sometimes with a look I couldn't quite decipher, a mixture of annoyance and perhaps a fleeting shadow of guilt. I didn't care. Each box packed, each item removed, felt like a small, painful liberation. When the house felt sufficiently purged, when the echoes of her presence had been replaced by the quiet hum of my own memories, I made another decision. I couldn't sleep in that bedroom anymore. I couldn't inhabit the spaces that had been tainted by their secret, their deception. My workshop, a separate, sturdy building on the property, became my sanctuary. It was functional, filled with the comforting scent of wood and oil, a place of creation and repair. I moved in a simple cot, a small stove, my own worn armchair. It was a humble space, a stark contrast to the grand, historic home I now owned alone. But it was mine, truly, unequivocally mine. The days that followed were a slow, deliberate rebuilding. I poured myself into my work with a renewed intensity, a fierce dedication. I sought out the most challenging pieces, the most severely damaged antiques. A shattered porcelain doll, its delicate face fractured. A grandfather clock, its intricate mechanism rusted and silent. A writing desk, its wood warped, its veneer peeling. Each piece was a metaphor, a reflection of my own brokenness. And each meticulous repair was an act of healing. I learned to be patient with myself as I was with the objects I restored. I learned that restoration wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it, making the scars part of the story, transforming damage into character. I started taking long walks through the squares of Savannah, breathing in the heavy, humid air, finding solace in the enduring beauty of the city's history, a beauty that had nothing to do with Evelyn or Mark. I rediscovered simple pleasures. The first sip of coffee in the quiet morning, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the focused concentration of my hands as they worked on a delicate inlay. I sought out new friendships, people who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could provide or how I fit into their ambition. Evelyn eventually left. The divorce was messy, as expected, but I navigated it with a quiet determination I hadn't known I possessed. Mark vanished from my life entirely, a void I barely noticed. The house, once full of their secrets, was now filled with a different kind of silence, a peaceful one. The attic, that space of betrayal, remained untouched for a long time. Eventually, I sealed it off, not out of bitterness, but as a practical decision. Some parts of a structure are best left undisturbed, their stories complete. My life isn't the perfectly crafted heirloom I once believed it was. It's more like a beloved antique that has survived a devastating fall, its elegant lines still intact, but with visible repairs, the slight discoloration where a piece was reglued, the faint lines where cracks were mended. Those imperfections aren't flaws, they are proof of resilience, a testament to what it has endured. I still believe in permanence, in enduring beauty, but now I understand it differently. It's not about an unbroken, untouched perfection. It's about the ability to mend, to adapt, to find beauty even in the broken places. I learned that some relationships, like certain antiques, are simply beyond repair, and sometimes the kindest, most liberating act is to accept that and move on, allowing yourself to be whole again, in a new, stronger way. The echoes are still there, sometimes faint and distant, but they no longer haunt me. They simply remind me of the quiet strength found in knowing what to let go of and what, within myself, is truly worth saving.